Hello, everybody. Welcome to Life on Mars. I'm Àlex, CEO and founder of MarsBased. And in today's episode, we have Clemens Rychlik of the Barcinno famous newsletter and also from Bourbon, a digital agency doing marketing, content, SEO, and other needs in this realm. Based in Barcelona, but they also innovating in many aspects. We have been collaborating with both parts through the years, through these 10 years of startup grind and MarsBased, being good friends with both Scott and Clemens. And in today's episode, we discuss AI, of course, but AI, not generically speaking, the AI that is going to kill us, but how AI will incrementally make us more productive in our space. In this case, we discuss content, we discuss the effects on SEO, on ranking and positioning, on reputation. They are an expert on all of these categories with Bourbon, and Clemens offers pretty insightful things about content generation, the authority that you can create out of the stuff that you produce, and how you are able to pass down that SEO juice, that expertise, that accumulated authority throughout the years to the new content that they will be generating as an agency, as a thought leader in the industry. And for today's question of the day, we want to hear, what are you using AI for? Give us a concrete example, a specific example, something that you do every day, not something you did just once, something that is instrumental to what you do, like it's data transformation. Is it preparing text? Is it proofreading? Is it content generation? Is it image enhancement? What are you using AI for, and what even if it's like really small use case, it's going to be very helpful. Just feel free to share it with us in the comments down below, or send us on social media or via email. We'll be sharing. Also, send us questions. We want to record a special 10th anniversary of MarsBased coming up next month, actually in a matter of weeks. Probably this episode's going to be landing on the first week of February, second week of February at most. And on the first week of March, we turn 10. So feel free to send us any questions at alex@marsbased.com, ola@marsbased.com, or our social profiles. And without further ado, let's jump right into this episode. Awesome. Let's do it. Well, welcome to the show, Clemens. Welcome to Live on Mars. How are you doing?
Thank you, Àlex. Really appreciate it. I'm good. Looking forward to this episode.
As I mentioned, I'm not nervous, but I'm concerned that as we speak, we might be releasing the new MarsBased website. And you know how these processes are like. They can be
Exactly.
pretty troublesome. And I know I should be there, but the times have coincided. And I don't
And
know
I
if you've
know,
been to any a similar experience in the past.
I know, I mean, we work a lot on like SEO projects, right? So this happened before, and I know you just moved houses. So I think the new website launch and stuff is almost like a house. Like, it always takes way longer than you think. So hopefully you will hit the timeline today.
It I would say our website has taken way longer. We started designing it almost 3 years ago. I want to say two, but I realized it's almost three because it was during the pandemic, 2020. And then we kind of like put it off for a year because we were too busy. Said like, let's recover this project in 2021. And then they say the shoemaker's children go barefoot, right?
Exactly.
Always too busy. Is that something that happens to you at Bourbon as well? That you're too busy with client projects that you can't work on your own stuff? Because at MarsBased, that's our daily pain, basically.
Yeah, I think it's like the typical thing, right? You always focus on clients first, right? So they take priority. And so by essence, you almost never have time. And then when you have time, it's usually holiday season or something. And then you have our project as well. So I totally get what you mean.
I wanted to start asking by the state of the art of AI, what you guys are using and whatnot, because it seems that it's a recurring thing on the all the interviews I have in this podcast, and it always comes in the middle of the conversation, and we never dive deep into it. And I think it's quite related to SEO, to PR, like the world that we're both immersed in. And so, how are you using it on a day-to-day basis? What tools are you using? What would you recommend? What not?
Yeah, cool. Now, for us, we've been obviously, and we'll probably talk about the different stages of how we went to AI before, but obviously we all had AI tools before, especially on content side. I mean, we've been all using them. So, I mean, in that sense, it's not really a new trend. I mean, everybody probably used like Grammarly, ClearScope, and this type of thing if you like deep in the content space. I think even Gmail has like for, I think, several years, they had this kind of like next word predictor when you were typing emails and stuff. Sometimes it gives you like the next phrase. So, I mean, these things existed. I think just now with ChatGPT and this type of tool, it just makes it sound like bigger and like scarier or whatever. So for us, we've been experimenting the whole year with different tools. I mean, we are kind of like, if we talk, it's a generative AI that kind of like really affects us probably the most. So we've been playing around with different tools right now, mostly with ChatGPT, just because it still seems to be the strongest one, at least for what we need it for. So this is kind of like our bread and butter. And then behind that, we still have the other tools that we use, to support our content writing and the processes. But really with ChatGPT, I think investing in, there's like a paid version. That's what we found really useful because it allows you to really, if you use it on a regular basis for content, production, review, this type of things, it makes it much easier to, again, cut down a lot on the time that you need to use it for, just because you can pre-write prompts, you can already include all the context that you needed to know. So just, you need to have typed the same shit again for like the 10th time or so, So I think that's like a big, big lifesaver, especially for us since we have different clients as well. We wear different hats. So one day we are, I don't know, writing for a fintech space, and next day we maybe write for like a health tech company. So this allows us to always keep overview. But I think, with ChatGPT, it's really, it allows you to kind of like do a bit of everything, really. And I mean, it's nothing new, so I don't want to go too much into depth on what people know. But we've been experimenting with other things as well. I mean, you mentioned the website. I know Scott has been using it to build like a landing page pretty easily in, question of not even days, So I think as long as you need it for something that doesn't need to be completely refined by the AI, you have like basically tools out there for everything. It's just like, a matter of like, what do you personally need the most? And then just like testing it. But there's literally like something out there for everything you can imagine right now. Even for, I think, for podcast recordings, there are different tools that apparently help you to cut down and clip it. So it's going crazy. And also all the companies that are not AI companies, are kind of like adding AI features as well. So I mean, we've talked about Zoom before, when we try to record a meeting. Everybody keeps adding shit and we don't even know like what's even possible or how it works. But everybody can say they are like an AI company now, right?
Exactly. And for me, it's crazy how people are hyper regulating or over regulating this, or doing, this kind of super futuristic and this impending doom talks that AGI will destroy us all and whatnot. And I think like the revolution of AI for me is the small things in the tools that we already use, right? So these transcriptor in Zoom, Grammarly embedded in Gmail, or Google Calendar telling you that, oh, you're scheduling a meeting with this person. He or she is much more likely to accept this invitation if it's only 30 minutes long and it's in the morning. Or he has been canceling the last weeks. He has been postponing a lot of meetings just because maybe he's sick or something. These kind of smart assistants, these digest of information to make our life easier. For me, this is a revolution of AI, not a fucking AGI that's going to destroy us all, not Boston Dynamics robots and stuff like that, which is cool. It's cool. It just maybe brings more people to the pool, to the talent pool, and just makes the pie bigger. But like the revolution is these small task savers, this automation, this destruction of super low value tasks that we had to do manually. And for me, it's been like, hiring an executive or a personal assistant, right? Having $20 a month for ChatGPT Plus. It's the cheapest bargain of all time, because I've been using it in the last 24 hours. Let's talk about the last 24 hours. What have you used to? But I have created a fake logo for a potential new company on a company presentation because tomorrow we have the company get together at MarsBased, and I'm introducing a theoretical meeting with another company. I'm like, I'm going to be talking about Pluto-based, a fictional company based off Mars-based. And so I created in 10 minutes, I created a logo. It looks fucking good. And I didn't have to sign up for Fiverr and stuff. But also, the content of our new website that's being launched, I translated pretty much everything using ChatGPT, not Google Translate, just because it's fucking faster. And all the things, I use it all the time. I use it to bounce off some ideas I might have. And I'm like, oh, this could be great, but maybe I'll ask ChatGPT to give me counter arguments and see why is this probably not a good idea. Give me all the other visions people might have about this. And it's very good at that. So as a good friend describes it, it's like an intern with infinite time. And it's really true. What have you used it for in the last 24 hours yourself?
Yeah, I think it's a great example. So for me, and for again, it's funny that some of these tools have been around before, but since AI kind of like exploded with ChatGPT, we just didn't talk about it as much. But for example, what we use a lot is Otter for transcriptions, like for English content, like for podcasting and stuff. It's really, really good, or interviews. It's like an AI transcription software, so that works really, really well. We actually have a lot of clients who, instead of translating content themselves for many years, have already been using DeepL, which is kind of like an open source translation software for basically any language. And then it's funny because then they ask us to review the machine translation. So we almost call it's a humanization of the machine translation, because sometimes you get random stuff. So I've used that before as well this week, actually yesterday. And then obviously like Grammarly, Google Mail, like these type of things are always on. But I think maybe the most interesting is within ChatGPT, like you said, it's kind of like this new users that you find for this like kind of like assistant. And it's exactly what you say. There's every week you seem to find some new application where you can really remove a super boring task and assign it to your assistant. So my favorite one was I think it was last week, because I work a lot of with data and stuff. When you do keyword research, and then you want to also analyze existing blog posts and how they perform and all those things, you have different data points, and I'm kind of like spreadsheet and Excel nerd, but I'm not like a super programmer that knows every little formula that exists in the tool. So before, maybe I spend 2 hours researching, okay, how do I make this cell do what I actually want? You have to actually first understand how the formula works, and then be able to apply it yourself. So it takes several hours trial and error to figure it out. And now I generally just go to ChatGPT and tell I have this column, I have this row, this is what you can find here. I want you to do this. Write me the exact formula for what I need right here. And you can almost copy and paste that. And instead of spending 2 hours researching that, you get it in literally a few seconds. And then maybe you don't have the complete learning process behind it, but if you then review the formula, you still get it, how it works, so you can use it next time. So I think that's a really, really great one. And the other one that I really like, because since we do a lot of content, a lot of times when we prepare briefs for new content and articles, actually I would say even maybe 70% sometimes of the biggest value comes from the research work that we do. And part of it is obviously manually, part of that can be now automated, and part of it can come through expert interviews and this type of thing. But sometimes you end up with so many input data points that it takes you quite a while to process all of that yourself and put it in a structured way. So we have different sections of an article that have a logical flow. And I found it incredibly useful to just put everything that you've collected into something like a ChatGPT and give you some structured idea on how to put together this data into clusters, into topic, and paragraph overviews. And then there's a great starting point. Obviously you need to refine it. Sometimes there's some random things coming out of that, and you need to tweak it with your experience. I think that's normal, but it does help you so much time, because if it allows you to do stuff faster and better, you're gonna use it, right?
Well, exactly. And that's one of my favorite use cases is the Excel one. Exactly. I upload the screenshot of my file. Sometimes I obfuscate the data. And then I tell it, oh, I want to do this. How do I do it? Because I know next to nothing when it comes to Excel. I'm just that horrible when it comes to data manipulation using Excel and spreadsheets. And it just works like a charm, pretty much 100% of the times. The other thing is you touched a point, you hovered on a point that I wanted to kind of deep dive a little bit more into it, which is the expertise. You need to review it, right? A lot of people are not conscious about that, and the thing is, for me, it's kind of like outsourcing, in which if you don't have a little bit of the knowledge of that field, of that realm, then you will not get the best results, because you will basically accept any output it gives to you as valid. And we know of the hallucinations of ChatGPT. We know of the hallucinations of artificial intelligence, how sometimes it just makes up stuff just because it's a conversational LLM. It's not a specific sectorial think this one, or we're using it for very specific things when it's a generalist. But the thing is, when, for instance, the translation of our previous website, when we launched our previous website in 2015, I manually translated all the content. Granted, it wasn't too much content, right? But this one, we have, I mean, we didn't translate the blog, but without the blog, we have about like 80 pages or something like that. I wasn't going to go 100% manual on this. And so I used GPT-4 to translate it. And but even with that, even if it's really good, sometimes it's too good and tries to be like, it doesn't have your tone. It doesn't have your voice. It maybe translates stuff that in your context that normally is not translated. If we are talking about maybe the downtime of a server, we don't translate downtime to Spanish. Like when we talk in Spanish, we talk about downtime. We don't talk about tiempo de caída or something like that. I don't know. I wouldn't even know a word for that. Or throughput. Or there's some certain things that are part of the jargon that we don't translate. And yet ChatGPT or the equivalents would translate them, right? But in the context of our website, doesn't really make sense. So that's why you got to review every output it gives you as if it were an intern, as if it were an agency that you were outsourcing to, right? Because otherwise you will be given these kind of maybe not fictional, but just not 100% ready for production outputs that you need to review. Otherwise, yeah, it is totally done by AI. But if you could tweak it a little bit, I don't know. I don't know how you can tell.
Yeah, I mean, you touched on so many points. I'm trying to structure my thoughts on this.
Welcome to the show. It's like it's gonna be like that for an hour.
No, it's great. I mean, I have a lot of thoughts on that. I would say maybe first of all, because you touch on a really great point, which is kind of like a lot of people are not aware exactly even like where this data comes from, and we can't because it's kind of like a black box, right? You put something in and you get something out, and it doesn't really explain like how did it, what decision did it take, what did it look at to come to this conclusion of, for example, in your case, the translation, right? You just get the result and that's it. So I think what's important to keep in mind is also, especially in our cases, I mean, we are deep in the tech sector on both our sides. I think it's important to remember that we are actually like, I mean, we're not like maybe the super geniuses of like technology and AI, but I think we're very much at the forefront, like actually using it on a day-to-day basis now. I would probably say like most of the people still have like literally no idea about AI still, and they don't know like all the details behind it. It was just this weekend. There's a really good exhibition in the CCB in Barcelona, the museum, about AI, and it really explains you a lot of the stuff, which I think is great because we need that. We need people to actually know what it is good at, like how it. I mean, not the details how it works, but at least the general idea, and especially then like what it means for you in using it in a day to day. Because, like you said, you want to make sure you review the stuff that comes out of it, especially if you want to create things that are really important to you. There will be some things, if you use it personally to maybe draft your, grocery shopping list, like you don't care if it makes like a small mistake or there, unless it puts like a super expensive item on the list that you don't want to buy. But if you use it for anything that's really important, like a website or like, I don't know, client emails and this type of things, you really, really, really need to double check it. I mean, translation is the best example. You always get like this random, like false friends, a lot of things that can go wrong. You definitely always want to have somebody who at least double checks that type of thing. But even here, we talked about this before. I mean, it's not something completely new. I mean, you had the best translators were using kind of like some sort of AI translation software before for a long, long time, where I think actually that still probably works way better than whatever we think about right now, because it allowed you to build like a translation library, right? So you could kind of tell it, okay, for this type of word or phrasing, please always use this. And then next time it just does it automatically. So I think as AI gets better, I'm sure there will be more specialized tool for translation as it will be for other things. I think this will make it really cool because then you don't have to always give the same always make the same edit that you do to not translate downtime, for example, right? And it's going to make it much easier because right now you can do it. I mean, you could probably create some like prompt library or some context that already gives it always the input on like, don't translate these words or translate this word always in this case. But again, it's just kind of like still not as automated as it could be, which I think ultimately the idea of AI is that it's going to be as straightforward and easy as it should be. So, just going back, definitely always, you need to double check things. Like the very first day I experimented for the content writing, obviously we're not using it to write content for clients, but personally we were experimenting with it to know how good or bad it can be. And especially for very long form content that's kind of like based on something new. I mean, it was terrible. I mean, for example, we gave it a test to write kind of like a journalistic article that should include like quotes and stuff to make it like more engaging and more authoritative. And then, okay, first read, you get the result. You're like, okay, it kind of like reads more as well. It's structured, the grammar is proper, word usage is okay. There's some quotes in it. You say, okay, it's actually not too bad. And then you look at the quote, you say, I don't know what this person is. Let's check it up on the internet. And okay,
it doesn't exist.
person doesn't exist. Okay, this quote has never been said. And then you kind of like ask the AI, and it's almost like a very bad, sneaky, student that when you ask it, like, okay, this quote doesn't exist, and she's like, oh yeah, okay, actually, I'm like an AI. I can't produce new quotes and stuff, but you should always review it. So it's kind of like, come on. It actually, even you ask it a question and then it admits that there's certain things that it didn't tell you until you like specifically ask it about something. So I think it's super, super dangerous if you leave any type of AI work unchecked. Especially going back to what I mentioned in this exhibition and museum, they gave great examples of how, we have to keep in mind that AI is trained with data points, and a lot of our data points that has been used to train AI are biased, depending on whoever was the researcher who was working on it. So by definition, a lot of the AI production is going to be based on this bias, which is also terrible because we don't want to kind of reinforce, certain stereotypes and discrimination that already exist in the world, because, actually we would like to do the opposite, like, use AI to make it better. So I think there's like so many questions around that just make it, I think, for me, obvious. Anything with AI, you need to check it. I think that's like basic one-on-one. That I think, I just hope that everybody who listens to this episode and beyond realizes that, because this is like really, really scary if we leave work unchecked. And then I find it funny what you said, if you can tell the style and stuff of AI, like, for example, even in content writing. I spoke with some even clients and other people in the content industry. There are certain things where you can tell this has been written by AI. It seems to have like a general like default style that is this kind of like friendly corporate type of writing. So even sometimes if people use it for email, you can tell like this guy is now using AI to write his email, or this social media post was written with like an AI. Sometimes it even uses exactly the same phrases, like a lot of social posts a lot of times are like, we have great or super exciting news, and this is like almost always the opener for any like news you want to announce. So it's really funny that there's like this default style, everything's going to sound the same. But then again, as you get smarter with how it works, you can give it more context, right? You could say, I don't know, write your social media post in the style of Elon Musk. If you, for example, want your, to be very polarizing and, offend a lot of people, that could be like a great way to go about. But you can pick different styles depending on who you like. But I think still that even though you can do that, you lose kind of like the human touch. You want to make sure that whatever you write sounds like you. Because otherwise, I mean, what's the point? Like, I think it would be shame if everything else ends up sounding the same, or like 2 or 3 general styles. It would be kind of boring for everyone.
Yeah, I tried it for the blog. I wrote a couple blog posts, and I let people know this was written with AI. We're just testing, right? And the funny thing is, like, we don't have, like, let's get a little bit technical. Let's nerd out a little bit here. So there's not yet a specification in HTML to give the authorship to an AI. Or putting another way, we got the author tag for HTML, right? Which is used for, to quote. It's used to give the reference to the original author of an article and whatnot. But I don't think it's prepared. You can't. You could write OpenAI and that's it, and be done with it. But I think we need to come up with something better. I'm even suggesting something in my. I think I wrote it on my personal blog, but I'll give it more diffusion. Maybe that we need to come up with something like, I'm proposing a seed tag, right? Where you can say like, oh, these blog post was written with AI, with this original blog post in mind, or with this idea in mind, or with this author in mind, right? Because the content is not his or hers, but it's a big inspiration, such a big inspiration. Maybe I have ingested his or her content into a tool, and then I have come up with this article that I have rewritten myself. To put it another way, like because you said it just comes with something that sounds too generic and maybe too polite and too nice, right? And there's one small nuance to the things that we do. Like, for instance, we're not native in English and our blog is in English. So sometimes I'm using idioms that are maybe not 100% correct, or some expressions shouldn't be there, or phrases are exceedingly long, or I want to use maybe words that are too complex for the context just because I'm not native, right? And that's my way of writing. And an AI is just not getting there. And I've trained an AI with our blog post style, and still it just comes up with something too fluffy, right? It's too optimized for marketing most of the times, right? And so I'm reading it and I'm like, I will not publish it because 100% people will know this is generated with AI. And then I end up almost redoing it, which is part of what you're doing, the fact checking, right? Or the style checking. I'm not saying I'm rewriting 100% of the blog post. I would say I'm rewriting 50, just because I'm also pretty picky about things and I've got my own style. I just want to add some more edgy conclusions. I want to be more blunt on some opinion that an AI is not capable of, or shouldn't be doing that. And the other thing is the fact checking. As you mentioned, I got a funny story here. I ran this other technological podcast. It's called Focaterra. It's in Catalan, and we did a live, sort of a live demo of ChatGPT when it came almost 1 year ago. Maybe it was March, something like that. I was asking it about Focaterra, the podcast itself. I said, "Oh yeah, totally. Focaterra is this popular radio program on Catalunya Radio and hosted by these super famous journalists." I'm like, no. So, if you don't know it, it's like, oh, okay, nice. I said, no, I'm pretty sure it's not a radio program. It's a podcast. And as you said, it's kind of like a sneaky steal. They said, oh yeah, sorry I might just look it up somewhere else. I might have hallucinated or something like that. It's actually a podcast, technological podcast, talking about the problems of Catalan society and a class war and blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, no, not again. Can you? And then I was refining the prompt. And the funny thing, and here's the funny thing, you mentioned about the quotes, right? I said, can you provide links to relevant articles and citations where needed? I said, yeah, I can totally do that. So it goes again, fourth iteration of somewhat wrong explanation of Focaterra and content and the host and whatnot. And then it cites websites that are actually made up. But the funny thing is the structure of the link. So HTTPS, all the slash, if you went to compare, it didn't link to anywhere, but you could find other links on the website following the same exact structure. Just there was something missing. There was something made up there, like my name, for instance, or Focaterra, like raku.org. So this Catalan radio /podcast /morning /Focaterra didn't exist, but all of the other podcasts of Raku, they followed this URL structure. That was very interesting to me, because it totally went to the website, it crawled, it learned about these URLs, and it made it up, following the same structure. It was so funny. And but then again, you got to check it, because otherwise you will look like the total automation or LinkedIn automation jerks who are like, hello, first name, congratulations to your accomplishment at company name. It will look like
totally
that.
But then again, that brings me back to how scary it is if we leave especially the published work unchecked. Because imagine that, maybe even somebody publishes something maybe in good faith, and they just write something with AI, so it's like a post about Focaterra or something, and then accidentally the AI described your podcast as maybe something, I don't know, like a super extremist, political website or something. And then this goes out in the internet, and then poof, there are a lot of let's say AI, maybe Twitter bots and stuff who keep reposting that, and then it's kind of escalates, and then you wake up in the morning and suddenly you have like a lot of DMs in your accounts, like saying like, Àlex, like, what the hell are you doing or something, So it's like really scary how, we know how social media, how fast it can sometimes make things go viral, even if the foundational story of it is wrong. But by the time people realize the damage has been done. So I think it gives us a lot of responsibility that we check our work, because there's going to be more false information if we leave it unchecked, which is really scary.
That's a good segue for my next question, which was going to be, okay, we've been working for years, for decades on SEO, right? We've optimized, and people see, not only the content, but also the reputation. Like there's stuff like Glassdoor, then you can work on the reputation you have online and whatnot. But then you ask about your company to an LLM, and it comes up with something that you're maybe not in control of. And we're starting to hear this, I don't even know the term, what it is, but if SEO is search engine optimization, and we got like also the App Store optimization, what is the AI snippet optimization? Is that even a thing? Is that something that you guys are working on already?
It's something that we're starting to look at very seriously. It's something we want to roll out next year. The reality is it is very, very new. So, typically, first of all, historically, something related to that is the claim, obviously, that SEO is dead, which is like, I think, happening for the 10th time now. So, SEO must be some sort of a zombie, because somehow it always comes back and is alive again. There was like voice search and all these things before, and every time people think, okay, now this is going to be the end. I think certainly now with what you mentioned, it changes. A percentage of searches will be done differently, and you want to make sure you can optimize for that as well. The reality is we have a lot of smart marketers who, whenever these changes happen, they run a lot of experiments and try to kind of like identify best practices. It will just take a bit of time until they have enough feedback and input from different experiments they run. So right now it's not completely clear, but I do think that in the end, especially the newer version of AIs, they are trained with more and more recent data. So my belief is that you just have to be understanding the side of things that when you work with ChatGPT or something and you ask it questions, it will be based on data that maybe were put in manually or from the internet. The one that you can influence the most is the one on the internet, right? So even if you think that more searches will be happening through this kind of conversational chats with AI bots or something similar, you will be aware that this is based on existing content. So SEO will still have relevance, because if you rank at the very top, it's going to be more likely, I think, that an AI is going to scan through something that you have written and is going to use that as one of the foundational pieces of its own training to create whatever output it needs to create. So I think in that sense, the main idea of SEO is still relevant and the same. It's just a bit more indirect in how the result then appears in this kind of like conversational search.
Yeah, no, that's totally interesting. I think it makes me think about the weight of the importance of an article or a website. As you mentioned, like the foundation of SEO is going to be relevant still, because most likely ChatGPT and all of these other open models are pulling data from Wikipedia and Google and Reddit. We know they pull stuff from Reddit, right? But at the same time, we know this is happening now, but it might not happen in the next iteration. The first iteration of the data, it's pulled from SEO stuff. Let's put it this way. The second iteration of data is something that they have reworked with their own algorithm, and we don't know what happens in this black box, right? So what you're saying essentially is that if we at least control the first part of the equation, we're in a good spot now, but we don't know what will happen in 5 years' time, right? I mean, kind of when Google had the rebalance to the algorithm. But how do you guys stay ahead of the curve? Like, how do you train yourselves? How do you stay on top of news and tendencies?
Yeah, for us, first of all, this is like a great question. And obviously AI is advancing so fast that it's really difficult to make, honestly, any sort of prediction whatsoever that goes for like 5 years or more. But like I said, I do think that if you follow the SEO practices and make sure the content that you want to rank for is at the top. This will help you, rank in the or appear in the conversational searches as well. And the other thing is, if we think about like how, from like a brand perspective, I think you also have control there, in a sense that if you establish proper like content style guide and messaging playbooks that you use all across your board internally, but can also share with partners that you work with, like agencies, at least that helps you ensure like a consistent brand message. So the likelihood that like a completely, off description of your company or products or services comes into play in the future is limited. But for us, this year has been very much about learning about AI, how to use these tools, because we realized pretty quickly that, it's not going to replace marketers, but it's going to replace marketers that are not using AI. Because I think it's pretty logical that anybody who uses this super virtual assistant in your day-to-day can be way more efficient with what you're doing right now. I can review more content, I can create more briefs, I can probably create more content also if I wanted to. So there's like definitely something that you need to use, but in the end it comes down to, it's almost like a new tool, right? Maybe we call it AI, but it's almost like a tool. You have to learn how to use it in the best possible way. So I mean, maybe we don't need all this like 10,000 prompt playbooks that are out there. I mean, nobody's going to read all of them, but I think you do want to learn how you can do what you need AI for in the most efficient and best possible way. And so what we do is we work with different tools every month. We try to have like, we have almost like a weekly call where we kind of digest of what we've been working with, things that we've learned. We built like an internal prompt library that we can share across the board just to kind of multiply the learning effects. And this has really helped us to, find some really cool ways to save on time internally. And then also just like sharing any articles that we see and read, we have like this weekly touch point where we really try to digest that. Like we talk about not really anything related to like client work and stuff, but like really just, okay, what have we worked? Like we have experimented with this tool. This is our experience. Could be good for that, could be bad for that. And then you just learn a lot faster, I think, because I mean, even with AI tools, I think there's probably like, in the time this podcast was recorded, there are probably like 10,000 new AI tools out there, because everybody uses AI to build AI tools then as well, which is crazy. But I think you learn so much just by engaging and practicing with it. So it's almost like anything else in life. You just have to do it. You have to learn, see the experience, and then you pick up stuff. And there's like even little things that sound like completely bizarre, but then you kind of just like trust them and test them out and see if it works. And then you see, okay, this is kind of like actually good. And then you just keep doing it. So I think one of the strangest one I've seen recently was some research that has been done that if you kind of use like an emotional pressure when chatting to an AI bot, it performs better. So if in your prompt you tell it something like,
if you're bossy,
do this and
you're
that,
rude.
and not necessarily rude, but if you say something like, hey, okay, do this and this, so you put in your normal, prompt and context, and then maybe at the end you put something like, hey, like, this is really important for me, like my job is on the line for this. It tends to perform way better, like at least significantly better on certain tasks than it would if you don't put it in. So it's kind of like strangely funny that this emotional pressure works for an AI, which I think is like totally bizarre somehow, like really strange. Like it doesn't have emotions, but it understands maybe your emotion and then tries to do a better job. So that's one. And another one that's also a bit strange is like, because again, it's not really a human, but apparently if you tell it things like, okay, I want you to do this and that, but, do it in kind of like a step-by-step process, take a deep breath and work through your process to get to the end result, maybe review it once or twice yourself internally before you post whatever your output is. That also tends to perform a bit better if you don't do that. So it's like these little things that we're still trying to learn that I think help us. And I think to it maybe even back if we think at how we use Google, I mean, strangely, there's still people who don't know, certain of the, I don't know how to call like codes for Google that you can use, like putting things into like hyphens so it appears the exact same phrase, or like excluding certain words from appearing in your search. I think it's these little things that, then make the outputs much better for what you need it for. And I think that's like something that you can only learn by doing it, like I don't think that by reading 10,000 prompt guidebooks, you will remember 5 prompts out of that. So you just have to do it and learn it that way, I think.
It's funny because I'm following a lot of people on. I'm following fewer people now than 1 year ago on AI, just because they're all posting the same shit, and it's too much shit,
Yeah.
and it's pretty relevant to what you do. It's impressive, right? It's like, here's this new tool, the thread boys, right? The AI thread boys, and every day there's something that was like, I can't play with these. I can't play with a new tool every day because I have a real job, motherfucker. So, but they keep overloading you with information. And the funny thing is, a lot of it, they give you like 80% of, or 80% of what they give you is true and valuable, so to speak. But 20% is made up based on impressions. I'm going to give you an example. Remember the, let's say, the peak days of Midjourney, right? When Midjourney was starting to become like really good. And everybody was kind of like, oh, here's my guide to writing the correct prompts with these and these parameters and this order and blah, blah, blah. And you tweak it like this and you add like the camera style and whatnot. And then funny thing is, a lot of these things made sense, but 20% of them were fake just because they thought they were working because they were getting good results, but they never cared to inspect whether taking them off would actually produce the same results. And some people are like, dude, I work at Midjourney or I work at here, and this parameter doesn't actually do anything. But it made them look like more intelligent, right? More elaborate. What I'm saying here is if you follow somebody else's steps 100% and blindly, you're just going to get there to the same exact place, maybe, but you're not going to get the thinking outside of the box results. And I see a lot of people just thinking in this ABC modality, and they're just following blindly what other people tell them and buying these prompt guides and whatnot, and they're not experimenting. We're losing these critical reasoning and this way of deep thinking, right, ourselves, and we're just following blindly, which is exactly the contrary to what should be done in these experimentation times. It takes me back to the beginnings of SEO, when there was black hat and white hat SEO and some really questionable tactics, right? But the good thing there is like everybody was experimenting, and something was good for 15 days or for 12 months, something like that, and it was a complete mess. But it was funny, we're experimenting, and nobody, like the regulation was never catching up to the amount of experimentation. That's when market is not yet ripe, right? Or it's just beginning to flourish. And I'm getting the same vibes right now with AI, and I want to stay on top, but at the same time, now I got a real job. I'm not a student anymore, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. I think, yeah, definitely at the start, we had all this hype that we realized we could do almost anything. And then we tried to even figure out like, what do we actually really want to use it for? And then like some things were like fun, but then, after for example, like with DALL-E or Midjourney, maybe you experimented with it for like, 1 day for like an hour or so to create some funny image and that's it. Or maybe you wrote some, I don't know, some like song lyrics for like some random, music that didn't make sense, just to see how it works. But I think once we get past it, it's like what you say, this experimentation is key. And then it's funny because that again brings it back to what we said before. It's key. Experimentation is important, but I think if you're not experimenting it for things that you have any expertise with to begin with, you can't really get what you said before, like having the knowledge of being able to actually review the result and saying whether that's good or not. Like if you take the Midjourney example, I think it's a great example of like how I think again that it's not going to replace a person, because yeah, you can use Midjourney. I mean, I could use Midjourney to create some images and digital art, but since I'm not a designer, I can look at all these prompts to look at like camera angles or lighting angles and like color composition and stuff, but I'm not a designer, so whatever is the output, I can say like, okay, to me, it kind of like looks good or like this doesn't look good. But a designer will be able to, even if they don't know the prompt, to just give it the information that it needs to, because they just think differently based on their experience. And then especially important, they can actually review the results to say whether this has actually done anything useful or not. So again, experimentation key, but if you're not an expert on the subject, like to what extent can you review the work? It's almost like as if I would hire, for example, you guys to do a web development project for me, and then I try to review their homepage, but I'm not like a coder, so I have like no idea. So like, what's the value of my feedback besides like telling you things about the appearance and stuff,
Yeah, oh, that's a really good point. Back to the circling back to the Midjourney thing, I remember that at the beginning, everybody was creating something like, oh, it's crazy, all of these spaceships and like fictional cities, but then it got really specific, and I couldn't progress anymore because, for instance, some people are like, oh, create this scene of whatever, a dinner at the table, but in the style of Wes Anderson, lightning from this angle, camera, this model. And because I don't have the knowledge of this realm, I don't know jack shit about cinema. I don't know jack shit
Exactly.
about lightning. I couldn't fine tune, right? So let's say everybody will become a generalist in AI, but the people who have the know-how, the knowledge, the sectorial knowledge, they will still be able to be 10 steps ahead just because they still have this knowledge of camera models, right? And the focus and the lens distance and whatnot. I don't, so I will not be able to fine-tune my creations with regards to that, right? Same happens with coding. I'm not going to get too technical here, but happens more or less the same with Copilot. I was going to ask you the next thing about kind of like to wrap it up, about the the business, the future of your business, because AI has given us a like a change of scenarios in MarsBased. We've always been a boutique company, specialized. We do very few things. We do them really well. At the same time, right now, people are catching up with the expertise just because AI has elevated people, right? And we have not yet found a way to elevate ourselves. Or we're in this time where people can get like pretty good code with Copilot, for instance, right? And
Mhm.
clients might just want to pay less to these people. Put it another way. Remember the um, Jeff Bezos famous quote of, I'm focusing on the things that don't change, not on the things that change. People will want to have a broader selection, cheaper and faster delivery over time, not the other way around, right? So for me as an agency, I'm thinking, if I'm following this reasoning, people will want MarsBased to do more technologies, provide the projects in less time for less money, which is 100% contrary to our philosophy. But what if we have to adapt to the zeitgeist, right? And if we don't do, it will be the demise of our company. Are you finding yourselves also in that position, or how are you seeing the future of your, marketing, PR, content, services future?
Yeah, I think it's an excellent question and something that I remember when we discussed it at the start of the year, it was like less clear for both of us, like what it may actually mean. But then you try to speak with people, educate yourself, and you get a better idea. I think you touched a good point on, people know these tools are out there, so they're gonna start using them, and they're gonna see how useful they are, or how useful they are not. They may be pretty useless as well in some things. So I think they will realize, regardless of the quality or the results they may get with that, there is like a very affordable, cheap way to do something at scale here, which obviously, if you put it in comparison to like a seasoned agency, has like a completely different proposition of what it tries to do. So you have those two options out there. I think as a business, you can't completely ignore that. I think you have to understand that this is out there and people are going to start using that. Maybe there are going to be certain things of the business that you're doing right now that maybe they will internalize, or maybe they're going to assign to somebody else, or that you have to rethink how you even maybe budget or invoice them yourself. Because I do think that over the long term, there are efficiency gains here to be made in certain tasks, in almost anything I think we can imagine. And over time, I do think the reality is going to be that some of that will be passed on eventually to the client, because if, for example, even if you have two agencies that are equal, one doesn't use AI and one does, maybe even the one that uses AI can perhaps charge a bit less, but have a higher profit margin by actually using AI. So there's going to be a lot of questions, but again, each function that exists in the job world is quite different, and AI is better or worse in each of them. In our case, we have realized there are certain things where AI is actually acceptable for content creation, which is rather, in my opinion, very short form stuff that is created based on an existing longer piece. So for example, creating social media copies or meter SEO descriptions, this type of thing. If you already have like an existing long form article, you can get pretty good basic suggestion that you can then use to kind of like review and enhance and refine. So that helps you definitely to save time. But at least for example, on the other case for right now, we also see that if you want to create some content that is about a niche topic or something that's actually new, where there's no data points or existing content to reference for your AI, then it just like goes into this hallucination mode with like random results. So, there's going to be a certain type of content where you still want to absolutely make sure that human approach is included there as much as possible. But then maybe over time, it's going to be better for kind of like shorter content as well. That's maybe, and I'm thinking again, if it's something very basic, like, I don't know, if you do like a lifestyle magazine and you want to write about the top 5 beaches in Barcelona, maybe you don't necessarily need like a human to write it. Maybe you just have an AI do like first draft and then you revise it. But again, I don't think that's where the quality comes into play. That's more of like a wider net in terms of strategy. And if I tie it back to SEO, which in the end, I think we do content traditionally from like the inbound marketing side. So the idea is to not just get traffic to your website, but get like relevant leads out of the traffic. I think I see a change here in terms of the general strategy, because before that, it has been very much about, the phrase was always that you're kind of like becoming like a publishing house almost. You want to publish a lot of content consistently and cast like a very wide net to go, have these like long tail keywords that you can optimize for. And that has worked. I think this is going to change now, because I realized that I think the important thing to keep in mind is like AI doesn't just exist for you. It's going to exist for everybody around you too. So if everybody uses AI to create content at scale, probably most of the content is going to sound exactly the same. So who is going to be number one on Google? If all things are equal, the differentiation factor is going to be most likely the domain authority and the offer authority. If you're like a smaller company that isn't very strong in those 2 points, then yeah, you can create a lot of content, but it's going to consistently rank in like very insignificant amount of ranking pages, like at the very bottom. So it's kind of pretty, you can do more content, but it's going to be useless, in terms of like end results. So I think that strategy will change for smaller companies. For larger companies, maybe that's actually where they can really use that to drive more traffic at scale right now. And I think for the smaller ones, and something that we also look at right now, is there's going to be more focus, I think, in a different mindset, a mindset that you are not a publishing house, that you're more of kind of like a library. Like you go in your niche, and instead of doing like a lot of content for generic topics, you go really in depth about the things that you really know very well. And you try to really outperform other content in that way. You add your unique arguments, your unique views, your expert opinion, ideally also your unique data points that you collect yourself and your experience. And that's actually funny, because that goes back to actually what Google wants. Like Google wants you to follow kind of what we say, like the EAT factors, right? So you have like expertise, authority, and this type of things. So it always brings me back that like SEO, ultimately, I think you can't cheat the system. Like you mentioned before, there are like black hat taxing, white hat taxing in the past that maybe worked for like a year or two, and after 2 years, Google launches a new algorithm that now punishes you for something that was like a best practice before that, right? Which is good. So I think the sustainable SEO, which is kind of a term that I try to promote, the sustainable SEO is to just like really understand what Google wants, what the user wants, and just follow this type of principles, like follow these EAT factors, follow focusing on value, creating something that actually helps the user. And I think that way you're going to differentiate. So this is something that we look at. So I think there's going to be more of that. This is kind of like where we can add the most value. And then aside from that, just again, being open to these AI solutions and seeing kind of like, how can we use our expertise as well as SEO, inbound marketers, or content writers, and use our knowledge of what we see with our experiments with AI to kind of like bridge the gap. Because I think one opportunity that we all have in our specific function is to become also kind of like master user, like a lot of people right now, they know AI is out there. It's very exciting, but they also completely lost on how to best use it literally in the day-to-day in the best possible way. So they're looking out for those people who can give them some guidelines, like how even in content writing, if you want to internalize it more of the content production and use AI for that, you want somebody who can tell you how do you do it in the best possible way. And we have experience with that because, we have been working with different partners together. So for example, in the content side, it would be, maybe make sure you have like a content brand messaging playbook that really defines who is your buyer personas, what is your style, what are the main points that you want to bring across your content. Because whether you assign it to a human or a machine, they will probably need like the same input to create a good work. Then you want to make sure you provide more context. You provide more context on style or certain phrases you wanted to use. So there's going to be so much in this type of field, which I think is a great opportunity to be kind of like this master Yoda person for people in your space, to consult them on one side, but maybe there's also going to be an element where you maybe roll out like training workshops for companies, where you can help them maybe code better with AI and humans and bridge that gap. So I think a lot of different ways. For right now, it's a theory for us. It's something we want to experiment with like a completely new brand in the new year. So we'll see how that goes. But I think it's important that we all kind of like keep an open mindset because everything is changing so fast. I think if you just keep doing what you do, it's going to be a question of time until you're going to run behind. There's actually a really good book, a very simple book that only has one main message. It's called Who Moved My Cheese? Like one of those like bestsellers, really, really short, but it really encapsulates the idea that if you just keep doing what you do, it's going to become like the end of yourself. So sometimes you have to take a bit of a risk, experiment new stuff and see how that works, because the outcome is probably still going to be better than just like staying put and not doing anything.
Which is actually a good point, because I'm seeing these like as a parallelism of no code, right? So almost like about 7 years ago, we had the rise of no code, and that was going to destroy all programmers, all programming languages and whatnot. And a lot of companies went cheap with no code, and they said like, oh, I can cut costs, and like, and now a project that I would have invested 150 grand in it, I can build it for 30. Good. Reality came to bite them back in the ass, right? And so all of these no code projects kind of like disappeared off the market, and eventually they moved back to code. Why? Because if you cut corners, if you use shortcuts, and the technology is not really proven, it will most likely not replace the entire landscape. It might become a niche. And no code, granted, is a great technology for a certain specific type of projects. It has become a niche, but it hasn't become the generalist. And I'm thinking that here we'll see the same. A lot of companies just replacing the marketers, the marketing departments in their companies. We've seen a lot of layoffs in these departments, unfortunately, or sacking their SEO agencies and whatnot, because I'm gonna do it myself internally with ChatGPT and whatnot. Guess what? In 1 year from now, this will be declassified by Google and deranked and whatnot, and will be penalized, and they will come back to you, to Bourbon or to whatever other agency, saying, oh, I need your services because I've got a mess and I ruined my reputation with SEO, and now I don't rank on Google and this and that. So you will be called back. Same for coding. I'm seeing that maybe there will be like a gap of 1 to 2 years time in which people are going to go cheap because they can do it themselves. They will create absolute rubbish, and they will come back to us, to the specialist companies, to the boutique ones in 1 to 2 years time, asking for help. So maybe it's just, how do we bridge this gap, right? So how do we survive for 1 year and then go back to actually showing the expertise that these people will need? Before we wrap it up, there's a signature question of this podcast. And I know we were finishing with a high note of these predictions of AI. Let's just tone it down, man. Like now it's kind of like the most difficult question of the podcast, but it provides the funniest answers, which is what has been your biggest and most expensive fuck up? And if you can quantify it with money, it has to be related to your realm. And don't give me crap like I hired the wrong people, because everybody tries to give me that one. That one doesn't count. It's something that you have squandered your money on, like, a wrong marketing campaign, like, something that you are like, oh, I lost 100 grand on this, something like that.
Yeah, for me, I mean, it's easy to say. I think if we're realistic, everybody makes a lot of screws up over their life. It's important that you don't do it twice. That's why at least I always preach with the team, it's fine if you do a mistake, but at least make sure you don't do it again. Then we're all fine. For me, obviously hiring, I think we mentioned hiring. I think that's the same one for everybody. If you're not an recruiter or trained on that, it's easy to make mistakes there. For me, it's probably on the SEO side is something because I came kind of like from a finance side, business degree. Then I kind of did like consulting with a bit of sales. And then when I first did my bridge to, let's say, the inbound marketing side, one of the biggest mistakes I made was like getting very lost. And it's like a typical marketing mistake, getting lost in this kind of like vanity metrics where you do like keyword research, everything, you do all the strategy, but you optimize for traffic. And then you run it for a few months and you say, oh, great, like we have this much more traffic, but how much more customers do we have? Like very insignificant amount, And I think this was like one of the biggest realizations. So I'm happy that I did it very early on because it helped us retain all of the clients that came afterwards. But this is like just like a really, really, really big one, because you can easily, content production is expensive, SEO work is expensive. So if you optimize for the wrong metrics, like just like website traffic, unless that happens for whatever reason to be really the one thing that the customer cares about, that's like a really, really, really bad mistake. Because like, yeah, you get traffic, but you don't get what you care about. Like ultimately people want to get like leads and sales, things that then, end up paying for whatever they invest in you and their own team. So that was definitely, I think, the biggest one.
Yeah, and you quantify it in money? How much money was like spent there, or like on potential,
I mean,
sale losses, or I don't know. Is there any way to quantify it? Not
I
that we're
mean,
ranking, but it just gives
I mean,
people
probably,
some dimension.
I mean, I'm sure it costs like several thousands. Probably still, yeah, still in the 4 digits, I think. I was happy we had like this regular client meeting so we could identify this early on. And then, first of all, keep the client, which is like, I think, a miracle, but I think they understood our transparency and trust on that. And we were able to kind of do the switch to then actually optimize for what mattered because we did it up, it ran for like 3 months or so. But yeah, that was really, really like a big mistake, and happy we detected it early and I learned from it and I saw it early. Thanks to customers, thanks to our management and stuff. Because if you keep doing that, I mean, imagine that you keep optimizing this for traffic for like more than a year. That would have been like huge, not just for us, but especially for the company who invested in you, right?
Awesome, man. 30 seconds for you to say, how can we help you back? Like you've helped us immensely with this podcast episode. How can we help you and your company back?
I mean, for us, just anybody who even has questions or doubts of where the content side and SEO side is going, I'm just always looking forward to speak with people in industry. Basically to learn best practices, share what we see, share what they see, kind of like see what they may need. Like I say, I'm not a salesperson. I hate sales. So yeah, if a sales comes out of it, great, but it's not the main reason I want to speak with you. So just, yeah, if you want to grab like an e-coffee or in person in Barcelona, it would be fun to talk marketing, AI, talk more on the things that we had here in the podcast in more detail because it is very exciting. And if not that, we have, of course, Barcinno. So I'm always happy to talk about startups, tech here and beyond. And especially my pet project with Barcelona FinTech, with our team there. If anybody's particularly interested in the FinTech scene here in Barcelona, need any help, any questions, definitely happy to talk and see what we can do. It's a nonprofit. So again, there's like no monetary reasoning behind it. It's literally just to help companies here be successful in the FinTech space.
Awesome. And just to wrap it up, my gratitude to you and your team for the loving and support that you've been giving us to our community at MarsBased and Startup Brand Barcelona over the years. So wanted to make it even more public. So kudos to you and your great job. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. We appreciate all that you do. Makes our life definitely much easier at Barcinno. And I think we need more companies like MarsBased, like Startup Grind, like, Barcinno to help our ecosystem, thrive. So much great stuff. We just need to all, put it out there on the map.